Welcome back to the Arbitrage.Run show. Special show this week. Kevin and I we already recorded this week's show yesterday. And right after we recorded the show, some news came out from Zed. There's a massive tournament slate coming out next week. It's pretty complex. It's different than anything we've ever seen. And coincidentally, Ryan, the assistant director of product, I think is his title, reached out to us about coming on and kind of explaining. He's the mad scientist behind these formats, and he thought that recording something to give an explanation behind what's going on and bring a little bit more clarity would be a good idea. Kevin couldn't make this part of the show, so it's just going to be Ryan and myself. I'm going to bring Ryan on right now, and then after Ryan drops off, you'll get the rest of the show with Kevin and I as we talk about the upcoming Maiden. We're doing the Zombie Maiden with Zombie. Kevin and I are working with him on that, and we got some more information on the 3.0 tournaments that ran last week and our 1 ETH stable that we built. So without further ado, here's the man, Ryan. What's happening, man?
Hey, Donkey, how you doing, man? I love the
Good.
mad scientist comment. I'm definitely feeling that way.
It's the truth.
Yep,
Which is
totally.
what Zed needs. It really needs this spark. I'm excited about what you've put together here, if I understand it correctly.
Right. That's definitely what I want to make sure like we can get as clear as possible because you're right. It is a bit of a detraction away from how we've normally scheduled events. We usually have had this kind of set cadence where there's one thing a day or maybe two things a day, but like the escalation of events is kind of something that we first trialed with these 3.0 tournaments. Obviously, each week, last week and this week has had a weekend capper, right? For example, we're in the premieres now. We had the mini premieres last week, and at the end of the week there was the weekly kind of capper for last week, and then obviously we have the 3.0 finale. We're calling it on Sunday with the highest prize pool. The most horses involved. But yeah, this setup schedule kind of leans a lot on those principles of, when there's, something exciting to do, that seems to be where everybody wants to put a lot of their attention. And of course that makes sense.
Yeah. So let me pull up the announcement or I guess, what would you call this? The program, your guide to the
Yeah.
tournament schedule.
Yeah, the guide's basically like the breakdown of, all of the nitty-gritty details.
So we've got every single day there's going to be a daily tournament. I guess I'll explain it the way that I understand it, and then you
Sure.
jump in and elaborate on that. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. So there's going to be a daily tournament. These are essentially going to be like the paid XP tournaments that we had 2 or 3 weeks back, is
Hmm.
my understanding, and that's going to be numbers 1 through 4 here. And so your racing lobby is going to be totally cleared out, and these are going to be the races that are available
Hmm.
on the daily for the entire week. So we've got a breed 3.0. So this is the only one that's going to be conditional, correct?
That's right.
So the rest of this, every horse is eligible for. This one is breed 3.0. And in class 1, it's going to be only level 501 to 550 breed 3.0s, correct?
Right. No, that's actually, I think, a common misconception, or maybe the guide's a little bit unclear there. It will be all horses from 501 to 550 in class one.
Okay.
Right. So,
Okay.
like, as a way to kind of encompass the fact that obviously the vast majority, besides super breeds of breed 3.0s, are landing in that range. But we also wanted to take the opportunity to activate all of the other horses sitting in class one who still fall in that range as well.
I like that. Yeah, because I mean, my concern when this was dropped was that, like, I think a lot of people's concern was that 3.0s just got buffed with 2 weeks of these massive XP gains in these
Hmm.
tournaments, and then they're just going to keep beating up on the lower 3.0s in perpetuity in class 1. So I think that this is pretty well thought out here. So those are going to be top 6 events, the racing format. This is going to be six gate, racehorse, you're calling it, top 2 events. Then we've got these as double ups. They're going to be 12 horses in each race. And then we've got the 1v1s here as well. And then there's also going to be a free racing tournament. So these are the 5 that are going to be available every day. There is no Zed sponsored prize pool for these tournaments on the daily. There's going to
Right.
be XP prizes, right?
Hmm.
And
Yep. So
then
go ahead.
it's cumulative, right, for the week. So there's also concurrently going on a kind of a weekly premiere, we could call it, right, for each one of these 5, or is it just the top 4?
So the free race tournament is just a weekly. There's no daily for the freeze, right? So all of the daily free racing will be leading into the weekly free premiere. And then for the top four, each of the paid racing formats will have daily tournaments that are, by qualifying for them, will also be qualifying for the weekly, right? So each event that you're qualifying for on any given day, any of the paid racing that you're doing will always be factoring into your overall qualifying for the weekly premiere, which of course has the ETH prize pools on top.
Gotcha. So there's going to be 4 daily tournaments going on,
Correct.
and those are all the paid racing. The free is just going to be weekly, and then there's also going to be another 4 weekly tournaments going on
Yep,
in each of these 4 race types.
exactly. And if I can just touch on the kind of rationale behind that. So one thing that we wanted to do was kind of start to build a level of escalation of events. So I know offline I had mentioned to you that one thing that we were trialing with these Breed 3.0 tournaments is basically starting in the beginning of the week with, let's say, a level of excitement that builds throughout the rest of the week. And that's matched by the prize pools, the competition level of the entries, and things of that nature. So, for example, we had all the paid premieres towards the end of the week for the 3.0s with a big capper with the most amount of prize pool for the 3.0 finale that happens on Sunday, for example. So this kind of follows that similar methodology of each individual event will have high, medium, and low stakes, and we can dive into that as well. But the actual escalation leads into the weekly capper event, which is all the horses who essentially did the best during the week in these daily tournaments and normal paid racing as a part of the daily tournaments will then have their, basically, let's think of it of like a satellite tournament, which is the weekly, which kind of wraps everything up and puts a nice capper on the week, and it's something to look forward to reward you for your efforts during the week.
And that's what's going to have the $20,000 ZED sponsored prize pool
That's right.
at the end of the rainbow, huh?
Yep, yep, of course.
Now that's being split up. How the 20,000, is it evenly between the 4
Yep, yeah. So
5,000
we're
for each,
starting.
or
So a quick note on the prize
5,000
pool.
each?
So similar to kind of what we've been thinking with the maiden, whereas the maiden is calculated based off of the average breed fee to place a new bred racehorse into that class, with some augmentation based on the number of breeds that have been placed into that class for the maiden, right? And we've kind of structured the sizing and everything based off of that. We're starting with a baseline here for this type of a schedule where it's just going to be split evenly across all 4 formats. And then depending on the engagement and activity and competition level in each of these different segments, we'll be able to have the freedom to kind of modify it from there. Similarly with the fees structures, the low, medium, and high fees could potentially change if they need to, depending on the volume and engagement. But basically the strategy is to kind of have a baseline, see how the baseline goes, and then start to tweak incrementally from there, as opposed to just swiping the schedule and kind of trying to do something new, because that's really been a function of the fact that there's so many options. We have all these tournament styles, all these formats, different lengths, entry fees, etc. It can sometimes be difficult to just do one event a day and really hit everybody who wants to play during the week. So the strategy here is to kind of do a little bit of condensation to put things in a little bit simpler terms. So basically, no matter what profile of horse you have and no matter what profile of user you are, maybe you like racing freeze, maybe you like racing high stakes, there's something for you to do each day. And there's an overlaid reward in terms of XP or the weekly tournament that kind of motivates you to continue that process.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then is it linear? Like class 1 will have the largest prizes scaled down to 3 from there?
Yep, yep. We'll start with a linear breakdown of the prize pools, and then again, things will kind of augment based on engagement and just the overall volume that falls into each segment.
Cool. So as you mentioned, there's I guess, schedule of fee stakes, as you've got here, entry fee stake schedule. And so below this in the guide, people can go and see like what these high, medium, and low mean in each class. So,
Hmm.
and for each race type, because it is different and it needs to be dynamic, right? Because maybe the highest fee for double up doesn't make sense for the breed 3.0 or the top two, right? So this is what you've got down here. So for instance, if we're looking at the top two, which I think is going to be a very popular format because it really is the only one that caters to the, variance horses, kind of monster. You got two formats here for stability,
Hmm.
right? And then you've got this for variance. So I think it's going to be pretty packed here in the top two, and we can see the days that it's low. So you start out with 3 high days
Hmm.
for the top two: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then 2 medium and then 2 low. So the last 2 days are going to be low stakes for the top two, and you can see that those are $5 races in class one, $2.50 races in class two and class three, and $1 races in class 4 through 6. And then the high stakes days for the top two, which is going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we can go down here and see that those are going to be $10 entries. And then the medium, obviously, are going to be $10 in class two. Sorry, $15 entries in class one, $10 entries for the medium stakes in class two. So I think that looking at the guide and even us like explaining it verbally probably still sounds a little bit confusing. But then once you kind of see it in action, I think maybe it becomes more intuitive.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm personally a very visual person, right? So like even putting it down on paper here, I'm recognizing that until I kind of see it in the lobby all set up and able to filter myself around and kind of explore, I understand that it will kind of be like a little bit overwhelming. But the idea here is that for this week, we will set this cadence up. We will structure things this way. We'll make incremental tweaks from here. And I'm hoping that everyone will kind of get used to this day-to-day flow of, okay, let's say I have a low stakes double up runner, right? Maybe it's not quite top of the class. Maybe it's kind of in the middle looking for a potential XP boost. I might come in on a Monday and say, okay, I'm a low stakes runner. What's kind of my target here today? Well, the double ups in, let's say I'm a class two horse, the double ups are $15. Okay, maybe that's a little bit out of my price range. Where can I kind of find that low stakes event? Well, 1v1s today are, the lowest stakes. So I can drop down and do $5 1v1s, right? And get all of that qualifying done, maybe get a nice boost there so that if I do get that tournament qualifier or I do have a nice performance and I get that 100x XP boost, the next day steps up to medium fees in 1v1. Or I might even have the courage to kind of step into the high stakes double ups. Or if high and medium still aren't fitting my profile, maybe I can drop back into the free races and try and get some qualifying done there and some XP grinding done there. So the idea here is that like if you think about yourself as a player, as a stable manager, right? On average, most of our users right now and players are kind of racing more than one horse, right? So if you're looking to kind of come in and see where's my time best spent on the platform today, we want you to be able to have a dynamic set of choices. What has kind of happened, especially, we see this last weekend with our normal tournament schedule is whatever the tournament event on that day, if that fits whatever horses you have ready to race on that day, you will spend the majority of your time and focus on those specific horses only. And if you have time, or if you're already racing high stakes or racing paid racing and already have some other peripheral things to do, you'll spend a decent amount of your time also there. So like it's event driven, right? The majority of players are going directly in whatever event's being offered because that's where the excitement is. That's where either the XP overlay or the monetary overlays live. And then you can kind of settle back into whatever your normal flow is. Maybe you race frees, maybe you race paids. Now, the idea here is that no matter what you're doing, you have a dynamic set of options that actually create additional experiences for you to go after that have that positive overlay, right? Like even if you have the monster variance horse, right? You might come in on like a Wednesday and say, okay, I know I have high stakes top two events to go into, but maybe because there's volume in the two horse races, even if it's not necessarily straight up positive EV to just grind 1v1s with a variance horse, because they're high stakes, maybe you'd give it a go in class one because you have those $25 entries, right? So like people will have the choice to kind of matriculate into different options depending on what horse they're racing at any given time, and then make that decision with each horse as opposed to saying, oh, there's no events for this horse today. I'm just going to wait, or I'm just going to bench this one and try and find my other ones, right? So the idea would be if you want to play with all of your horses and you have the time and willingness and capital management and effort ready to deploy there, you should be able to do so, right? There should be a ton of options available for you. There should be a level of game theory involved in how you're actually participating. You shouldn't just be slapping into races all day without any understanding of kind of where that places you in the weekly qualifying, where it places you on the daily qualifying. And I think it just makes for a more dynamic experience away from kind of how we've normally been running the live operation schedule.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think that we'll see how it works in practice, but in
Mhm.
theory, it makes a lot of sense to me. You can see the multipliers here that Ryan has laid out. So for those days, those daily tournaments that are low stakes, you're going to get 100x multiplier. The medium stakes 150x, and the high stakes 200x. And these are based off of paid racing XP. Is that correct?
So the multipliers will always be based off of how much XP you earn in a free race. So the entire system is kind of balanced off that, tournaments specifically. So when you enter into a tournament race, technically the tournament races are free races. So the
Okay.
multipliers are all based off of that. For example, if these 100x, 150, 200x were based off of paid racing, it would be an unbelievably high amount of experience, right? Like we
Right.
know that free races compared to like a $2.50 race is a significant boost up, and the entire kind of XP economy with XP NFTs coming and things like that are balanced based off of that. But again, these stakes here as a baseline, if for example, the high stakes aren't getting enough volume and people are just collapsing into low stakes again, we can tweak this, right? We can kind of use the multiplier and maybe decrease it in the low stakes and then boost it in the high stakes, create a little bit more discrepancy. So we have tools and at our disposal to kind of modulate this lobby to make sure all of the volume and activity is going to the places that it needs to go, as opposed to what it has been, where like, for example, I know that the previous iteration of the racing lobby leading up to this change has gotten a little bit of feedback in terms of, the element of choice is gone, right? Well, the element of choice is gone because when we have presented all of the options, all of the fees, all of the availability, people go where the volume is, right? Because time to fill is prioritized for anyone playing the game, right? You want your race to fill as fast as possible so that you can get the enjoyment of actually playing as quick as possible, right? And even as a stable manager who might be managing 100 horses, you will still be watching those certain events that have a high value to you, right? Tournaments, high stakes races, a new horse's first 10 races, for example, right? So trying to identify those moments and put them into scenarios where they're shared experiences with everybody. Like I love watching C1 premieres. I really do. I think they're like the most fun thing to see. I love seeing a new horse. Like obviously there was the example of the horse that was bought for like 0.05 and ended up winning an ETH in the C1 Breed 3.0 premiere. Like that's what the game is all about, right? Like these multi-stage experiences that kind of capitalize on what the day-to-day grind might be in order to progress your horses.
Yeah. So, what do you say, Ryan, to the people that think that XP is being given away like too freely, and it's to the detriment of the more established horses, the Genesis horses, all these horses that have spent time to grind their ways up, or started at high levels, now being caught and potentially passed. Is that something that you guys are concerned about? Is it something that you keep an eye on, that you're looking to like shift those levers? Because like what's the value of XP going to be when these XP NFTs are released if it's being given away so freely, right?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about like how XP tournaments fit in with XP NFT is that XP NFTs basically will always be multiplicative bonuses on top of whatever you're already earning, right? So like they're accelerators for every aspect of how you're earning XP, right? If it's your paid races, if it's your free races, and the demand for that will be whoever wants to accelerate themselves as fast as possible. Now, the winners specifically, and of course the qualifiers and the people who do well in these XP tournaments are seeing significant boosts that are rewarding them for their already innate ability, right? Like on average, the horses who are at the higher levels are going to do the best in these tournaments, right? And especially in class one, it's going to remain that dynamic where, okay, all the 600 pluses are winning these XP tournaments. How do we start to kind of provide a linear experience where no matter kind of where you are in class one, you have the opportunity to get an XP boost or race in races that aren't so crazy that you can use XP NFTs and have like a structured path to progression. The interesting thing about what we've done with like the Breed 3.0s is kind of twofold over the last 2 weeks. One, we wanted to provide an opportunity for people to explore what 3.0 has to offer in terms of a competitive structure. A lot of the times you see you're racing the same horses, the same 1.0s, the same 2.0s who have thousands of races under their belt, right? And it doesn't really matter whether or not you think you can beat that horse at any given time. There's some psychological negative feedback loop of just seeing the most established stables and horses in any race. So we wanted to give people the opportunity to basically discover what their 3.0s were capable of along the way of leveling, and also amongst each other in a competitive environment, so that when we do give them the opportunity to race against the open field, they have some level of confidence in the fact that like breed 3.0 isn't like inherently broken, right? Like it works similarly to 2.0. The difference is kind of where those starting levels lie, right? Especially in class one. And the other classes, it's, you know, basically unilateral experience. It just kind of depends on the breed partners, right? But in class one, I think, and I think class one is kind of where your question aligns most importantly, right? Because the 3.0s have boosted over the last 2 weeks significantly up into the competitive structure with some of the best Z1s and established 2.0s, right? But at the end of the day, the volume still needs to exist up there for there to be competition, right? Because otherwise, what happens is the 600 pluses will just break down into the lowest entry fee available, and then there's not really any intrinsic motivation to be up there, right? So like class one is a complicated problem because the ability levels throughout class one are much more, there's much more discrepancy than the other classes, right? Like it's a much bigger class, 200 levels, right? So we're trying to create an opportunity to have a competition level up there that eventually allows us to provide big ticket style events, right? If we have a bunch of horses above 600 that can actually compete, now we can start to augment experiences where we know it's not going to be, and I'm sorry for bringing him up, Ready, Set, Boom winning every single event, you know, because he's 660 or whatever, right? And the goal eventually is that each class will have its maximum competition at the top of the class, right? If you look at class two right now, class two is like a great glimpse into what class one could be over a long period of time, right? Class two is like the level 500s competing against each other. Like it's incredibly competitive, and it's exciting because you kind of never really know what's going to happen on any given day. And that allows us to give tournaments that have multi stages and big ticket events down there. Class one will become that. We just need the liquidity and racing volume up there, right? So rewarding horses for their performance in tournaments and providing XP multipliers is something that we kind of gave 3.0 as a kickstart to. And people can agree or disagree with that methodology, right? But now we're opening it up to a broader field where the 3.0s still kind of shelter themselves within the top six format, which is like a very balanced format. But if you are one of the highest variance horses amongst the 3.0s, you might have to make the decision to kind of leak down into the top twos, especially in class one where it's open, right? If you're above 551, you're one of the super breeds, you need to compete with everybody else in the open, right? So that's kind of like the philosophy, is segmenting all of these horses in ways that actually make sense, as opposed to just a hard stop. Oh, you're 3.0, here's a bunch of other options for you, and kind of separating in a ways that makes sense, right? Like variance is kind of the thing that the 1.0s have that is really a significant advantage if they're at the same level. But as you start to get into class one, where level advantages can kind of, provide a little bit more parity in those competitions with the 1.0s, the Genesis, who are well established, it really just makes for a more exciting racing environment and a little bit less of kind of a linear, oh, Ready, Set, Boom's in this race, there's no point in me joining, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, last question for you on these tournaments. Like, I guess I want to color this question with a little bit of something that Kevin and I talk about later in this show, which people will stumble upon. But for you to answer this question, Ryan, I'll give you this color up front here. So we talk about how part of the issue, I mean, it's a very complex issue with Z negative community sentiment. The real main issue behind that is uncertainty. People don't know what next week is going to bring as far as tournaments go. 2 weeks ago, we see all these 3.0 tournaments coming out, and it's like, okay, well, I guess now 1.0s and 2.0s and Genesis are worthless, and we only want 3.0s. And it's like instability and uncertainty creates an unstable market, which is kind of a vicious cycle, right? So Kevin's request is, ultimately having like a 6-month set schedule out into the future where we know, okay, you can hang your hat on this. There's going to be these opportunities for your horse, versus right now it's like, well, I don't know. Next week, Zed might say, screw all these 3.0s. They're going in the garbage and we're going to do 4.0s kind of thing. So I think that the question here, obviously, I'm curious your thoughts on that. If you agree on that, if that's your plan ultimately is to get something set in stone for the long term, so people can kind of project, and then is this type of format that you've created here what you're hoping to turn that into? Are you looking at this as more of a test and hoping that it goes well and then just continue to carry it forward, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that so let's kind of define this as like a foundation, right? And the foundation has two really key important things in my mind, right? The first one is that no matter what type of profile of horse you have or what profile of stable owner you are, there needs to be an experience that exists for you to have like an objective that feeds into a bigger objective on any given day, right? Whatever your engagement is on the platform should be feeding into some bigger carrot, right? Something that you're there for besides just earning XP, besides just the grind. And then the second thing is kind of starting to build this escalation of events that would allow for us to have a monthly schedule or a 2-month, 3-month season or something of those along those lines, where everything that's happening in the day is feeding into the week, and then your performances on the week feed into the month. And then we have these big capper events that we can use as marketing experiences. We can use as these big all eyes on this event, right? Like a monthly premiere, for example, right? Like something that basically rewards all of the horses who really competed day in, day out over the course of the month. That's kind of like something that we haven't paid a lot of attention to trying to get set up, mostly because there are so many options available in terms of segmentation for the way that these horses work. We have level-based conditionals, breed-based conditionals, breed-type conditionals in the open class. We have all of these classes. We have, all these different formats that I've created: top 2, winner take all, top 6, double up, 1v1s. So there's been so much segmentation that you kind of have two options, right? You either need to make a standard and say all of the escalation of events feed into just one standard, which of course has its fallbacks, right? Let's say top 3 became the standard. Well, then you basically wipe away the potential for like a big escalating cadence for all stability horses. Now, the thing that we're trying here, and of course this is an experiment, right, in terms of it's possible that the infrastructure might need a little bit of a boost to help handle 4 tournaments running every day and an
Leaderboards are going to be a
tournament.
mess.
I know. So I want to be clear that I understand that there are some technological fallbacks that we're trying to get better, right? Like we're trying to make sure that it's known that the leaderboards need to be updating a little bit quicker. We need to get kind of to make sure that even if it is every 10 minutes that they're updating, that they are up to speed, right? And we have some type of verification process to make sure that's happening. These are all things that we're aware of and trying to get a little bit better at. But that being said, what we really want to create is that option that no matter what type of horse you're racing on that given day, you should have something to do, whether it's low, medium, high stakes, whether it's top 2, whether it's double up, whether it's winner take all, whether you're stability, whether you're variance. If that exists, then you can pick and choose your adventure every day, right? Which is like something that is where I want to go with live ops, is basically providing you the opportunities to engage in a bigger objective on any given day, no matter what specific group you fall into. Because recently with the live ops cadence that we've had, it's basically been like, for example, today, right, we have the top 3 premiere for 3.0s. Even if you have a 3.0 who doesn't race top 3s, you have nothing to do today in your mind besides the normal daily grind, right? I want to provide experiences every single day for every type of user and every type of horse. And this is kind of like what I see as a baseline foundation for that, right? We could make arguments all the time about like, oh, maybe we need 551 to 600 events on top of this for class 1. Or, oh, maybe we need level 401 to 425 or the first 25 levels of each, right? And this is kind of a distillation down to we meet all of the different profiles, low, medium, high risk. And then we also meet all of the different horse profiles of high variance, balance variance, stability, and ultra stability. Something for everyone at any given time. Even if it's not hyper optimal, like of course I know that this day and age, the game has become a lot of min-max methodology, like, people using ZSIM, people really trying to get to the nitty gritty of ROI calculations. But at the end of the day, if we create these stepstone experiences where like you qualify in the day, the fact of the matter is tournaments are very exciting because you really don't know what's ever going to happen, right? Sure, some horses win the most over time. Like if you put Ready, Set, Boom in 10 tournaments, he's probably going to win 2 or 3 of them, right? But on any given, in football, they say any given Sunday, right? Like you can have an upset. That's what makes tournaments so exciting to me is those multi-stage experiences where any horse could pop a variance run, right? Or if you have a top 6 format, any horse can drop into the 5th or 6th slot and then get into the semifinal or the next round where there's another 30 times XP boost, right? That increases their ability to race normal double ups or normal 1v1s during the week. And maybe allows them to make that step up into the next medium tier or the high tier, right? So all of this is kind of building the foundation for what can become a calendar of events, right? For example, I can make this extremely dynamic by saying, this is the structure, right? How we have this set up as the structure. But next week, if we take that low, medium to high fee tier escalation in each format and swap them around, all of a sudden you have a completely new week, right? For example, the top 6 Breed 3.0s go from low linearly to high, right? The following week, they could go and match the 2-horse winner take all events where it goes low, medium, high, 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 medium, low, right? And kind of swapping things around to make sure that when you're coming on any given day, there's kind of a new experience for you that still fits underneath this overarching mold of daily events that escalate into weekly events.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it sounds like you understand the request for more transparency on future
totally.
tournaments and the impact on the market, which I think is what people want to hear.
Totally. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And listen, I completely understand, right? I know I've obviously played through a lot of different, changing metas and different sure you can call it instability, right? Like not really knowing exactly what event was going to come next. Like you can even look back to like the Supercoat tournament, right? Like how crazy was the Superfull tournament where I saw people talking about it in Z General today, like Gainsborough coming out of nowhere, right? Like those, but then you look back at the game and you're like, damn, like that was one of like the most exciting moments of my Z career, right? Like the unthinkable happening, right? Like nobody thought Gainsborough was going to pull it off, and then that happens. So creating more of those exciting style events that kind of overlay on top of what the day-to-day grind might be, because the day-to-day grind is really like an intrinsic system that provides there to be a linear progression in the game, right? Like that's the core aspect of it. But live ops' job and my job as an event designer on top of that system is to kind of make that a rewarding process besides just getting XP and just doing better in paid racing,
yeah,
right?
or
Creating these augmented experiences on top.
yeah, and offer somebody the shortcut around by using money or skill to potentially sidestep that grind time aspect, put somebody else on the team to take care of that, and yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense that you guys are trying to build. Well, we've already gone like way over the time that we were planning on it. No surprise, right? When
Yeah,
you
no
and I get on
surprise.
to talk. But I got to ask you before I let you go, because the community wouldn't they wouldn't let me off the hook if I didn't ask you. So I'm not going to let you off the hook. When are we going to get sit and goes and XP NFTs? Can you give us any sort of rough time frame?
Yeah, we're still targeting this month, right? Things move around all the time, so we're hoping to have them done by the end of this month. But a quick note on sit and goes and how they might potentially fit into this, which I can certainly really quickly go over. On how we have like these escalation of fee tiers, like low, medium to high, high, medium to low, etc. Sit and goes can slot in here perfectly. For example, let's say it's Monday and the winner take all 2-horse is a low stakes. On that day, there might be sit and go tournaments that are high stakes, right? So like sit and goes actually slot into this much better than they would slot into a normal racing schedule and event lobby as we've had, because if the event lobby had all of the availability, right, and sit and goes existed with a ton of availability, right? Let's say maybe 3 formats that kind of fit everything. A significant amount of volume is going to kind of flow into those instead because there's not really like a give and take between the two systems. So the idea here is if we structure the normal event lobby to feed into events, which listen, people love tournaments, right? Like everybody knows that tournaments are the main thing that people like to experience, right? The day-to-day grind can be rewarding for different profiles of users, but there's something about qualifying for a tournament and getting involved in a multi-stage event that escalates along the way that is inherently exciting, right? Providing more of those opportunities in ways that work with each other will be really important. And hopefully, by the fact that this is happening with the race event lobby, should give you an idea of how close sit and goes are, right? Because it would be a little silly of me to kind of launch this entire thing and be like, oh, sit and goes fit in, but you won't see them for a while.
Mm.
But we did, we've had play tests. Like I've seen how they look. They look great. So I'm excited about them. And, not my job to give firm timelines, of course, but they're coming.
Yeah. I guess we'll never hold you to anything because we understand it's Zed, but looking forward to it. Thanks for coming on, Ryan. Really do appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get a lot more comms from you guys coming up in the near future. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you, man.
So let me drop Ryan off here, and then I'll be right back, Ryan. Everybody hang around here. We're going to get into the rest of the show with Kevin, but really exciting stuff coming up with the Zombie Maiden. Like I said, we're working with him. We're going to bring back a lot of the stuff that Lucky Jack was doing. So stay tuned for the rest of the show and enjoy. Welcome back to the Arbitrage.Run show with your host, Donkey Teeth, and the star of the show here with me today, Kevin from Arbitrage Racing. What's happening, Kevin?
Hey, Donkey. Doing all right, man?
Yeah, these 3.0 tournaments are beating us down pretty good over here, but we're getting through it.
Yeah, it's been rough. It's like they troll us and qualify fine, and then these top three events will come in fourth. I think we had a couple in the Premier, right, which is just the worst spot, the ultimate pity point spot.
It's tough. I mean, the class 1 horses, like I think we talked about in the last show, like we didn't put a whole lot of time and energy into leveling up our class 1 3.0s after maidens and stuff. I think the early couple RSB kids, we did pretty diligently on them for a while, and then they just kind of faded because it's such a grind up at the top, and we were focusing on profit in the lower classes too with our monsters down there, and so only so much time. So we're behind the 8 ball a little bit up there. We spent a little bit of money catching up, buying Beat Red and no killers or anything. We got Super Seed, right? So class 1 is tough. We're behind there. Wagme's got a lot. He's like unlimited grinding up there in class 1 with those marathoners, right?
Yeah, marathon's so predictable too. They just dominate that space, especially in the double up type environment.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's good. It's a good thing for the ecosystem. I think net positive that, we're seeing every day new stables with big wins and stuff like that. I think like everything in Zed, small tweaks make a huge difference. So it does feel like maybe it's again gone like a little bit too far in the other direction towards 3.0s, right?
Yeah, I mean, we called it though, right? Like I think anybody who analyzed the structure for these 3.0 tournaments might have been somewhat intentional, right? Like they're just flooding them with XP. We predicted dashing double would probably be the first 700 in the game. It's not quite there yet, but it's well on the way, and it's now to the point where it's so much better than any other mid, especially in 3.0s, that it may be 675 by the time this week's over with the tournaments. I know it had a big premiere and like well deserved. They put in the time and the investment when it was not the thing to do to level that horse up as the best 3.0, and now it's just printing this week. So congrats to DK on doing that.
Yeah, nice move. I mean, it stings a little bit with us with the RSB now getting passed up. Like we wanted to get to 700 first, but maybe they can flip the switch in the other direction, right? Like I really was hoping that there would be paid XP tournaments for some stretch during this 2 week. Like the game would have been so much better because paid racing is it lags behind anytime there's no incentive, and if there's that carrot of like being able to level up your 620 horse 10 levels in a day, right? That's huge.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Now I think this is a big correction to the racing market in terms of on a track where you've had, I don't know, I bet there's gonna be 30 3.0s who probably go up 50 levels during the course of this, and that does a lot to make them peers with some of the best 1.0 2.0s on the track. So now suddenly you can open things up a bit more. You can have more of those open XP tournaments, and like dashing double is going to play just fine in there. Or like some of the WAGME 3.0s are going to do fine. They won't have the variance to win, but there's all these different formats. If you're doing a pity or you're doing even like a podium or a top 6, like they're going to play really well, especially on the sprint side. Like I think there's some sprinters who are top tier levels, and they've got 3+ more days of this. They're going to be the highest leveled sprinters as well.
Yeah, I'd really like to see some interesting choices as Facundo laid it out, because there really has not been a whole lot of interesting choices in the game for the past however many months, right? And I think now we're reaching the stage where it could get interesting here. Like you could make these 3.0s choose. Do you continue to beat up on the other lower 3.0s, which really haven't stood much of a chance. I mean, you could get really lucky and win some of these in class one anyway, right? We're talking about class one here. Make them choose between continuing, short-term profit beating up on 3.0s or keeping their lead maybe on the 1.0s and the Genesis and the 2.0s and race against them and kind of, I guess that's how I see the game ultimately playing out, is them using those levers of XP to make people make those choices, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, anytime it feels like the open division should be the biggest in terms of the biggest reward, and then the more like segmented you get, it kind of goes down from there. So yeah, to your point, maybe they just have it where you make a choice. Like we have stamina, we have fairly strict stamina now, like aging is occurring as well, to like make people decide, do you want to go open for the biggest rewards? Do you want to go 3.0 only for slightly less? Do you want to go like, I don't know, 3.0 under this many races for like even a smaller, like they can segment it to where you kind of pick your own adventure. And if they incentivize it properly, you can have a functioning ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some hope here, even though if you go out on social media, it wouldn't seem that way.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I've just been unplugged. It seems like it's at least stabilized. Maybe we're numb to all the negative noise, but it was not like a historically negative week on Zed Twitter.
Not historic. Yeah, I guess that's
The free money. The free money's out there. People are enjoying the overlay. At least the 3.0 owners. There's still the normal like people who feel like they got rugged with the Genesis and 1.0, but yeah, is what it is at this point.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, yeah, hopefully there's a compromise to be made here down the line.
I think there will be. We'll see. I'd be surprised. Like I don't think the game survives if they don't do some adjustment. So they're sharp. They just need the resources and time, really, which they have very little of at the moment for both.
Yeah. So good intro here. We're going to circle back on the 3.0 tournaments and maybe talk about some of the 3.0 horses that we've bought, how we're feeling about a little bit more in depth on this stuff. But we want to first make a big announcement. I'm really excited about this. We had a pretty long call with Zombie Joe yesterday about the upcoming Maiden, which what's the date of that? I think it's not this coming Monday, but next Monday. Was the 21st or something like that.
Yeah,
Sunday.
I think the 22nd is like for us East Coast or US. It's the night of the 21st. I think it's the 22nd.
Yeah, so we got like a week and a half from when we're recording this. And we've been talking to Zombie Joe about partnering up and kind of sliding into Lucky Jack's position of helping with the format, promotion of the Maiden. We want this thing to be huge. We want it to be the event in Zed like it was. Lucky Jack did a great job kind of pioneering the trail. And I think both of us loved kind of the format and the strategy involved in what he had set up. So yeah, we were talking to Joe about that, and it's going to happen. And so we've made some tweaks to the format with Joe. We didn't want to come in and just be like, we got to change this. But we had a long discussion about what we think would be best for the community and best to get the most people involved in the biggest prize pools, while also spreading out the money and kind of aligning incentives here. So Kevin, what are we going to do here? Like, can you give kind of a high overview of what the format is going to be for this Maiden?
Yeah, I'll give the highest, and then if you want to give some more detail on top of that, so I don't forget anything. But
and none of this is like 100% locked in until Zombie comes out with the blog post, but pretty sure this is exactly what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think hop into his Discord channel or unsilence the Discord channel, because that's where the updates are going to be coming from. There will be
I'll put a link to Zombie's Discord in the description for this show as well. If I remember, I should remember. I think I'll remember this time. So make sure you jump in there, because there'll be lots of good information coming there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole idea is basically we want to keep it simple for this first one. I know there's been a ton of different iterations, and they've been fun. I think with 3.0, we wanted to focus more so on just the breed types. It seems like that is like the primary predictor of where you land in terms of what your starting level is. So we wanted to have legendaries competing against legendaries, exclusives, and all the way down. So we're going to have, like we said, 4-ish groups. we're going to group Pacers and Crosses together at the bottom. That'll be the lowest price point. I don't know if we have that finalized, but something like $10 for one of those, $40 for legendaries. And then you once again, I think like Joe did last time, was great. You just pick your funnel, right? Because with 3.0, you pretty much know what you're breeding at this point. If it's a sprinter, mid, marathon, you pick that, and that is kind of your grouping for the maiden. And I don't know if we finalized how they're going to compete against each other, but I think it's going to be a combination of racing against horses who are also in your funnel, racing against legendaries, racing against other legendary sprinters. And then we're going to have a combination of that where there's going to be a champion of each of these subgroups, right? And you're going to have a legendary sprint champion. You're going to have a cross pacer marathon champion. There's going to be 12 of these groups, and those are going to populate the grand final format that we all know and love. Obviously, the legendaries are going to be more favored, but anything can happen in a small sample in Zed. And since the cross pacers elites are at a lower buy-in, it kind of handicaps that already baked in that, yeah, legendaries have to pay the most, but they'll also be competing for the biggest prize pools. And if they make the grand final, they'll have the best chance at winning there as well, but not a guarantee by any means.
Right. And so what we decided to do here to incentivize entering horses in lower breed types, elites, crosses, and pacers is, so I think this is what we decided. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. 20% of the entry fee is going to go towards the overall grand final, right? And then 40% of it is going to go to your specific breed types final, right? So like if you're entering a, let's say, elite marathoner, 40% of all entry fees from those elite marathoners go into the prize pool for that final race, correct?
Yep.
And then the other 40% is going to be spread across all of those finals, because there's going to be 12 finals. There's going to be a legendary sprint mid marathon. There's going to be a exclusive sprint mid marathon. There's going to be an elite sprint mid marathon, and then there's going to be cross pacer bundled together sprint mid marathon. So there's going to be 12 finals and then one grand final with the winners of all of those. So the final 40% is going to be spread across all 12 of those finals to kind of redistribute the wealth, since those legendaries and exclusives will have an advantage when they get to that grand final, which is going to be 20% of all entries, right?
Yeah, and I would once again say, like, none of these figures are totally finalized. So I mean, if you want to give some feedback ASAP, we're open to hearing what the community says. But yeah, the thought is basically you have your core funnel is funded by the people, the horses that join that funnel, and then you're going to have kind of the best horses naturally overlay some of the lower classes to help incentivize those joining. But then 20% of the pot of the elites, pacers, crosses is going to go to the grand final, which is going to inherently overlay and kind of feed money more towards the top. So it is it's an interesting kind of flow of EV where you're kind of funding yourself. You're also subsidizing the lower classes, but then they're also subsidizing the grand final, which is more geared towards the legendaries. So I think it's an interesting dynamic. It's going to change every time we do this. So it is the first iteration and not even finalized at that, but that was our thought going into it. And I think it is a pretty interesting, well-balanced structure.
Right. Because if you think about it, the question going in that we had this long call with Joe yesterday is like, is anybody going to breed elites? Because the way that he did it for the last one, which was, not publicized, like we found out about like the day that it was running, and I think there was like 130 horses in it. Nobody's going to breed elites because they were lumped in, like elites, crosses, and pacers were all lumped in with exclusives, right? So there was legendaries and then exclusives and lower. So there's really no incentive to breed them. We want to add a little bit more strategy to it. We didn't want to get as crazy as Lucky Jack did. And I do like the idea of having, the Z number, and, we just want to try to keep it simple and understandable, which we have to keep reminding ourselves of, right? Because we all want to get crazy and have all these fun different formats, but let's start it slow, get everybody in, understand how it all works, the sign up process, everything, and grow it. So we've got massive prize pools. And I think this should bring value to all of our breeds, all of our, the entire ecosystem should hopefully benefit from something like this if we can grow it large. So, but anyway, the idea is that Now there's incentive to breed an elite because all of that money that's going into the legendary bracket, if you get, let's say, 500 people put in legendaries or 500 people put in exclusives, 40% of that is going into a piece of that is going into the elite and the cross and pacer. So if you look and you see there's only 10 crosses and pacers entered, there's a huge opportunity because that prize pool is almost like guaranteed based on the overall number of horses that enter, right?
Yeah, you think of it as like 40%, so 10% goes into every bucket, right? So 10% is going to go stay in legendary, 10% is going to go to elite, 10 is going to go to exclusive, 10 is going to go to cross pacer, which we've grouped together. So you can kind of back into, based on the amount that have entered, you can kind of project the prize pool. You can figure out where the overlay sits, which would then kind of create a really dynamic structure across the number of days that you run this to, it could be possible maybe join at the last minute because you see there's no elites and it's huge overlay and you just breed like 3 of them immediately and pop them in. It just adds a little element of kind of game theory and skill, which I think a lot of the Zed community enjoys that.
Yeah, and suddenly you got a reason to breed those exclusive males and lower potentially even. So yeah, I think to circle back to, I love this format. First of all, to circle back to what you said about how it's actually going to work, I think the lean is, and we can have this discussion right here because I think I'd love for the community to see behind the curtain on what we're thinking and why we're thinking it. So the question here is, do we want to have it be passive qualifying where it's like Dan's sit and goes and you just enter and you're placed in your qualifying races and you don't have to enter anything and you can really enter unlimited number of horses because there's no work on the back end of manually racing? Or do we want an active qualifying where what that would look like is Zed would theoretically create races in the open class for us, like Dan did for the Z268 tournament. And these would theoretically be like 21 races and less and your breed type conditional. So theoretically, horses that weren't actually, maiden horses could sneak in there if they're under 21 races, but they would still be your breed type. And if we went that route, it would be like 10 races that you need to get. Now, it does get a little bit more confusing like that, and maybe it limits the number of horses that people could enter if you have to manually race all of them, like 10 times or something like that. And then I think you're right. You kind of brought up this point. Like there's going to be some people who mess up and run too many races for the Zed one, and then don't have enough races for the Zombie Maiden to get their 10 or whatever we set it at there. So I think our lean right now is to go the other direction, make it easy for everyone. I don't know in your mind what that looks like. You brought up the term round robin, how that would look if it's all like automated and custom racing and you just enter and your races populate and you qualify in that way. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, this is what Zombie did last time. So it was basically you have a cohort of, I don't know, say 36 horses enter at the legendary sprint level. And you've got 6, I don't know if we're doing 6 horse races or 12. I don't know if we've decided that. But effectively, you create a structure where you have like 6 qualifying races, 2 at each sprint distance, and you're going to have a different set of horses in every single one of your 6 races. So you end up kind of racing against every horse in your cohort in 6 different races. And if you do it that way, it's almost like a league or a season where at the end you then have your best horses who qualified the highest either advance to a final, or even you could just have like that 6 race round robin decides the winner, depending on which direction we go. So it's a cool way to do it with that. A, it's passive, so it's easy. And then B, is you get a good sample, like pretty fair racing against all the other horses across your 6 races.
Yeah, I think that seems like all of our lean at this point. And of course, we're open to community feedback, but I think that leads to less confusion, right? And more entries and bigger prize pools, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the whole theme of this one is just simplicity, get the community back into it. And I mean, part of the fun is just like seeing how your horse stacks up against these other horses. And this will be more like you've seen how it stacked up in the Zed Maiden. This will be a few days later. So you get like a second chance. And by doing it that way, it also like slightly incentivizes you to run your horse between when you unbox it to when that Zombie Maiden runs and level it up a few levels, right? Like 1 level, 2 levels could be the difference. So I know we did that a few times with the lag, where you can just early in class 1, you level up pretty quick. So that could be enticing as well to get your horse active and not have to worry about exceeding 21 races or whatever, because no matter what, you're going to be in the races. There's no work for you there.
Yeah, or to add to what you were saying about leveling up, if they happen to have some paid XP tournaments or something running, maybe you decide to donate a little bit money and for that shot at some massive XP if you can sneak into qualifying there. So yeah, I think it adds a lot of interesting dynamics to the entire ecosystem, really, and hopefully bring some utility and value back to a lot of our horses that have been kind of destroyed by this transition period, shocked market, right?
Yeah. Plus, just like custom races in Zed, it just feels like the future, and it's always kind of cool when you can put those together. Like whenever they pop up, even with Dan's, like it's always like, oh man, that's cool. They're just like 268s that you told them to put in a race. That's fun. So
And they
I
lost.
yeah.
Yeah, I think this was another thing that we talked about with Joe is like it's really fun, but also we want to try to figure out how to keep it special, and we don't want just like this chaos of having a billion custom races populate and like you don't even know what's going on, you can't follow all of them, right? So finding that balance of having enough races for qualifying, but also having these prestigious finals races and prestigious grand final, because that's really a big piece of it, right? Having that overall grand final with, I don't know, I think we decided maybe we're just going to run 3 races for that grand final at 1200, 1800, and 2400 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the fewer the races, the more fair it will be for like the lower breed types. If you have a huge sample, the legendary is going to win every time, just because naturally they have a higher level. If you have that 3 race one, it'll still skew towards the higher level horses, but it gives a good chance for the others, which I think that's kind of the thing Zed's missing right now is unpredictability.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess we should address the rake on this, because we have had we had thoughts when the rate came out on the Lucky Maiden. It started out pretty excessive, and I think most of the community communicated that, and they lowered it. They listened, and it still seemed pretty high at 20%. We talked to Joe about this. We were advocating for lower rake, and he told us, his 10% that he gets, it really just covers his site costs. So, that seems totally reasonable to me. We're going to be putting some time into this as well, obviously, and we're going to breed some horse prizes as well. So we're going to take the 10% that Lucky Jack was taking. 5% of that is going to go to horse prizes that we breed. 5% is going to go to us for our time and effort that we put into it. Hopefully the community feels that that is reasonable. Of course, if we're able to get this to scale and grow, then those numbers are they're going to go down. They're totally negotiable. So we'll see how this goes. But again, just want to be totally transparent on how the funds are gonna work. We're all kind of incentivized here naturally to get this to grow. But we're all putting time and effort into this as well, right?
Yep.
All right. I think that's everything on the Maiden, Kevin. Huh?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And then once the blog post is out from Zombie, maybe we'll do a special show. Maybe we'll do a live stream if people have questions about anything. We'll see how our schedules look, but there will be plenty more information. We want to make this as clear as possible, make sure everybody knows what they're doing, how it's all going to work, and all that. But
you maybe hit on it, but yeah, the other thing tied to this is we'll still have our maiden auction with our 6 horses. I think this will be our 3rd time doing that. And part of that entry, we will go ahead and enter that horse or all 6 of the horses into this Zombie Maiden. So in buying a horse, you also get a free entry into the Zombie Maiden, since that would need to be registered before the first race. So wanted to make sure we hit that, so there wasn't any confusion. Still doing it. The show must go on there. And yeah, you'll get a free entry.
Right. And this is going to be the 3rd one for the auction. So, we're going to have the callback for the older winners. So that'll be fun after this one. But yes, a lot of information we're throwing at everybody here. if you buy any horse from us, unraced from our sales stable, you're going to get an entry. We're going to pay your entry into the Zombie Maiden. So just another little benefit. Any horse that you buy from us, we're going to pay the entry fee. So if you want to scoot over there to the Arbitrage UUU sales stable and snag one of those that's out there cheap right now, you'll get a free entry into that next Zombie Maiden already. So anything else on the Maiden there, Kevin?
No, I'm good. Excited for it.
Yeah, me too. I think this is going to be a blast, and hopefully just the start. We can start to build other stuff with Zombie, and the community needs more of these fun events. We got to pick up the slack for Zed because they're a small team now, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think Dan Chen and other people have done a great job, but yeah, he's only one man, so we'll try to take some of the weight off his shoulders as well.
Agreed. And other people are doing that as well. I'm excited to see the stuff that Zed Racer and the Zedge are working on. I know that's coming too. And I thought there was another one that got the community grant. But
had the accountant and crypto Sonar did their Vegas event, which I think was last night, filming this Thursday. Sounds like it was awesome. I know we bred a few horses for that. So yeah, props to them. The in-person Zed events are second to none. So anytime you can do that and kind of actually make it real is always awesome.
Agreed. Hopefully hopefully we can get to the point that is a real future where they're, popping off all over the country and all over the world, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Kevin, so let's talk a little bit more. I mean, we've already hit on most of our thoughts on the 3.0 tournaments. And then we're going to do a quick update on the 1 ETH stable. We've had some really good luck. As bad as our luck has been in our main stable with the 3.0 tournaments, our luck has been just as good, I would say, in the 1 ETH stable. Although I would prefer it be flipped around.
Scale's a little different on the two,
yes.
But yeah, we'll take it. Better than all bad luck.
Yes, agreed. But before we get to that, let's just talk a little bit more on these 3.0 tournaments. I guess my question for you, Kevin, is I saw some people on Twitter talking about that they feel that Zed has too much power now in their ability to determine which horses have value and which don't, which we've seen. Our profitability this month is in the dumps, right? Because it's all funneled to 3.0 tournaments. And, we've been on top for a long time, so we can't really complain. It's good for the ecosystem. We like winning too. But do you think that Zed has too much power with this ability to just be able to flip the switch on XP and suddenly 3.0s are the only thing you want to own?
Yeah, I think it's the nature of being in a beta where they're always testing certain things and they're just moving these levers across the board. It'd be a lot easier to have a defined value if we knew the roadmap of all right, this month's gonna be 3.0, but next month's gonna be 1.0 is back. It's just the lack of transparency there and a lack of forward-looking projections makes it feel like they have a lot of power, and at times they're just flying by the seat of their pants. Where it's just well, I'm killing it right now, but as soon as these 3.0s, they may never come back. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's the way it has felt. So I think that is why it feels like they have a ton of power, just because there's no confidence in valuing anything right now, because you don't know where the overlay is going to be funneled, where the XP is going to be funneled. That's why it'll be cool. I think eventually, once this is more in a steady state and there are options for all types of horses. On top of that, you have us, Dan Chan, and the rest of the community leaders running tournaments where it can almost be a community voted tournament. All right, what format do you guys want? You're complaining about Zed. Now let's make something real for you about what you actually want. And we'll run a tournament suited towards that, where you can kind of control your own destiny, right? So that's my thoughts on it. It feels like they have a lot of power because they do, and there's no roadmap at all. So it just leads to a lot of unknowns around valuing horses. What is a good horse right now? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. The people that are really complaining out on Twitter, I think I don't discount any of those feelings because there's so much validity to it, right? The one thing that I do think gets overlooked is we're in this transition period of market shock, and it's really tough period that we're in, but that doesn't mean that in 2-3 months it's going to be like that. And I know a lot of people are like, well, Zed's not going to be around in 2 to 3 months. I don't believe that for a second, personally. Fair point. If you believe that, then you should probably just forget about the game altogether. Sell your horses for what you can. I know it's less than what you paid, but we're in this tough period, and they weren't able to. Everything was released piecemeal. We still don't have sit and goes. We still don't have the XP NFTs. And we don't have, as you said, this, like, if we could get a 6-month schedule of what tournaments are going to look like, we could value things so much easier, right? We don't have any of this stuff. They're really struggling, I feel like, to get the things out that need to be out to have the minimum viable product, which we haven't really had a minimum viable product for ever. Like, this is a dying game for the past 12 months, right? So we're in the transition period. We really don't know what it looks like once you have XP NFTs, once you have sit and goes. We don't know what else they're planning after that. There's just a lot of unknown and uncertainty, and all of these changes came at once. So market shock, it's kind of a vicious cycle. All the negative sentiment adds to that. Like, the people that are out there, being overly negative are kind of adding to this downward spiral, which, I get it, but it's not helping, really. They're not. You're yelling into a void. There's got to be some sort of more positive way that we can express ourselves and our opinions and come together as a community to move in a positive direction. So yeah, I think it's just a tough transition period with a lot of market uncertainty that's causing a lot of the other issues that people are complaining about, where horse prices are down, stud fees are way down, all of the above. Your ability to profit is down. It's just, there's so many factors to just lay it all on Breeding 3.0, even though you and I think that Breeding 3.0 needs some tweaks, right? It's very, very much too simplistic in my opinion. There's just so many variables, and then you add in the overarching bear market in the entire world, right?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much basic economics, right? If there's uncertainty, things crash. And if, like, a key portion of valuation, like the key portion of valuing something, is expected cash flows in the future. If all that's unknown and there is no, like, certain cash flow outside of a maiden is about the only consistent thing we've seen, of course prices are going to crash. There's no, like, way to get your money back that can be reliably expected. So of course prices are down. Like, thinking back, I don't know, 8 months ago, when a lot of people would say was one of the best ZED markets, at least with like 2.0 flourishing. A lot of that was due to the overlay, but with that, there was a very set tournament schedule, to where, like, you knew if you bred down the line and got to an elite or an exclusive, there was going to be a tournament with this much overlay, and you could have that beast you've kind of power creeped its way to class 1, and it was going to dominate those tournaments. So you would then pay more to get that type of breed and invest in those bloodlines. Like, that was somewhat certain, and part of the reason why that group feels like they've been rugged is, like, there was certainty, the valuation happened, and all of a sudden plans change without really much warning at all. So it's no coincidence that was the most flourishing economy Zed may have seen since the crypto boom, versus now, when there's not as much overlay, there's not any certainty or roadmap of, like, what is Zed's plan over the next 6 months. So those are my thoughts on it. It's not unexpected at all. Like, it makes perfect economic sense.
Yeah, I mean, as bullish as I have always been on Zed, as much as I love Zed, I said to you before breeding, or before racing 2.0, because we didn't even know breeding 3.0 was coming at the time. That was the most bearish that I had ever been on, like, an individual Zed asset. Like, I didn't want to buy anything. Like, I was happy with where our portfolio was, right, in terms of balance and diversity. But there was no way in hell leading up to that I was like, yeah, let's go spend another, $20,000 on one horse. Like, there was just so much uncertainty on how leveling would work and what the new game would be. So yeah, this is not a shock. It's unfortunate that it's turned into such a downward spiral and vicious cycle of negative sentiment, poor communication from Zed, maybe not really well thought out decisions, or maybe they were well thought out and just poorly communicated because we don't fully understand the vision, slow execution, just all of the above. Like, it's just compounding issues that have led to everything kind of being depressed. And, it wasn't like these horses won and these lost. It was everybody lost in value, right? Which is not how it should have played out, but it did, right?
Yeah, definitely a crash. And yeah, I think it's not that this is insurmountable. Like, I think a lot of the top end prices might be, but once a plan is communicated, at least you can get a proper valuation on things, whether you choose to do like a 3-month runway or 6. At least you'll know. And with that also comes the horses that got rugged can then like accept defeat, right? Because right now it's kind of like, well, I'm already so like in this and I invested like a bunch of my 2.0 assets. It's not worth even selling because there's always a chance that it'll change it back. If they kind of come out and say this is our end state and here's our roadmap to prove it, it would suck. But at the same time, you could kind of accept defeat and finally liquidate your assets based off the current value and then just move on to a different community instead of fudding it. But right now it's this weird limbo where it's like, if I FUD enough, maybe old Zed will come back, or I'm going to like burn the place down on my way out. Which is exactly the sentiment, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, agreed. Just to speak to the top end, because this is a part of the game that's important to me. I know a lot of other people, and that's why so many people are upset, because they feel like it never will rebound. The top end is a reflection of the game economy as a whole and opportunity within it, right? If we look at real horse racing, that economy flourishes because of the billionaires in it and the mass appeal and the gambling industry around it and that prestige around the Triple Crown and big events around the world, right? That's something that Zed doesn't have right now. It's possible, right? The percentage likelihood of that outcome decreases by the day, as you say, but it's still possible. And we don't know, like there's other things that could happen that we haven't even considered that bring value to these horses. Sponsorships, breeding tweaks, of course, is a big thing, right? Like if you've got a Genesis that is capable of producing a special horse relative to the other horses, I know they don't want them too special. They don't want too massive of a gap. It's dialing in that right area. But if it can do that forever, there's big value at that top end. So there's just a lot of things that can change and tweaks. I try not to overreact. I do see all of the concerns that people have, and they're legitimate concerns. But just wanted to kind of say my piece on that. I think, we're at where we're at, but we've kind of beat this horse dead over the past couple of shows, haven't we?
Right. Yep.
Let's talk about the 1 ETH stable. I thought this was interesting. Crazy Horse posted about the 1 ETH stable show. He hadn't listened to the show yet, but he came in without even listening to it, saying, how can anybody spend $2,000 investment into this game with the way it is right now and expect to get their money back, right?
He thought we were clickbaiting him. We would never clickbait.
Yeah, maybe he didn't like realize that. Maybe he thought this was just kind of like a paper trading exercise of like how we would do it, but we actually did this. Okay, Crazy Horse. So I mean, we might be idiots. I don't know. I got Kevin here. I'm definitely an idiot, right? I got Kevin here telling me if this is really stupid or not. And he condoned all of these purchases and in fact said that he felt that they were good values at the time. And here's a quick update on where we're at. We did reinvest some of our profits because we actually are making a profit, believe it or not. What are we, like 2 weeks in here? And we've already got, let's see, where are we at here? 0.244 racing profit. We've reinvested pretty much all of that, right? We ended up buying 2 Shadows of Sarah from Heroin and Ringleader. I think that was from their joint stable. It's a really good 3.0 sprinter. We didn't know how good it was. It was a pretty small sample at the time, but ZSim was showing pretty high variance and definitely has some sprint distance preference. And it's really been a pleasant surprise. It's already, we got it for little over 0.16, and it's already got 0.086 profit thanks to the 3.0 tournaments. And it's doing really well in the top 6 breed 2.0 plus conditional top 6s. Can you imagine a new user trying to understand what the hell we're talking about here?
I would just click the race and see if a horse was eligible and then enter them.
It's going pretty well here though, Kevin. I guess to get a return, like essentially a 20% return on our investment in a week and a half, 2 weeks is pretty darn good. And like I said, we've been kind of lucky, I would say, on how things have shook out, but pretty good, right?
Yeah, I think it's been definitely running hot in terms of outcomes versus like expected. The one thing that I think is unlucky on a more macro level is if you look at the date of these purchases, a lot of this strategy was picking like some of the best 2.0 type horses because you can get them at great deals. And I
Right, that's
think
this one.
basically at like 429 or something, maybe 428 is when they made the announcement of the 3.0 tournaments. So like any of those 2.0 horses, we probably would have, maybe except for Glorious Penguin, I think the better use of those funds, had we known, would have been invested in something similar, but 3.0, because it was immediately getting 150K of overlay. So that's a bit unlucky, like, right? Zed giveth and they taketh away. But in spite of that, we're still positive EV, even doing it the hard way.
Yeah, and these horses could, one tweak next week and these horses bounce back in value too and
There
become
really isn't a
more profitable.
case, like once, I think like just trying to anticipate what Zed's going to do is a scary proposition, but it makes sense to kind of ostracize the 1.0s and Genesis because they are truly a different algo. There really isn't a case for 2.0s and 3.0s to be in different classes. And I think you're starting to see that with like these 2.0 plus categories. And that's where this stable would flourish if that were the case. I think that was our thought process during a lot of these purchases is, well, the elephant in the room is that monster DP, monster variance number that only 1.0s and Genesis have. So it's very possible 2.0 plus becomes its own little racing league. And let's try to get some of those best horses within that. It just so happens the immediate carrot went to 3.0 only, and maybe that was to get them caught up in level since they had not been privileged with the base ability of 2.0s or the time that 2.0s have been leveling up. I think this 3.0 tournament, like we talked about, has done a really good job leveling that playing field. And once levels are the same, like 3.0s and 2.0s are virtually exactly the same.
Yeah. So let's see. Going Alone has been a nice hit for us. That was the first one that I bred from this pair that I bought from Iceberg Jake. Was the Phantom Pacer inbreed here, and it landed again very fortunate. This actually Great Boom was not a fortunate breed. It landed at the top of Class 2, but it doesn't seem to have gotten a whole lot of variance from Boom Tune and Great Hedge. But Going Alone landed at the two breeds. We landed at the top of Class 2 with one, Class 3 with the other, and this one Going Alone at the top of Class 3 has some legitimate variance. Going back to our ZSIM numbers, it seems to be above 7, which is pretty darn solid for a 3.0. So that one's been a pleasant surprise. A little bit of luck involved there. Dean has really a nice stability sprinter, has done well in these 3.0 only. He's already, doubled his purchase price. That was a really good deal. And I already mentioned Two Shadows of Sarah. So we'll see, we've got some nice breeding pieces here between the Phantom Pacer inbreed pairing that we've already seen do well. And, I don't know if we'll do Dean now that we've seen it run more with this Phantom Pacer. Maybe we'll find a different direction to go with that because it's a little bit more sprint distance preference. But we're going to be able to kick out some nice offspring from these females that we've got for this upcoming Big Maiden. And I really like the position of this stable. I think that it's a good way to build it based on 3.0s. And now you can get an even better deal if you want to snag a couple of the variants, 1.0, 2.0s or something like that have been kicked aside speculatively that, they'll flip some sort of lever and kind of anticipate the direction that Zed might go next. I think that's a viable strategy, but there's always opportunities, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. I think we took advantage of some really well here with this stable. We'll see if it continues to go our way with it, but there's always opportunities out there if you dig through. Like, the game isn't what a lot of people wanted it to be, but you can still make money in the game. You can still have fun. And there's, this type of negative sentiment and market uncertainty really does breed opportunity, right?
Yep, it does. I mean, as long as, the game survives, there's
exists.
A ton of great opportunities right now. And you just kind of have to shoot your shot on a bunch of these different horses. And I think there's kind of two phases. You have like the fudders who don't who have assets, but they have not dropped their prices to fair market value, yet they keep like depressing values by fudding. Or you have the ones who are like finally done and they're literally just like wiping their hands of it. So if you just shoot your shot on a bunch of those, eventually you get those really good deals like we did with Dean at 0.04. So yeah, it does take a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, like a good amount of research and just a bankroll to shoot your shots on Haku. Not these low bot bids, but some good like upside value offers.
Right. I think we just bought one from Netty last night, a 3.0 that has solid variance. It's in the middle of class 2, so it really needs some leveling. We'll see how it does in these last few 3.0 tournaments, but it was 0.08 and it seems to have a legitimate marathon variance. So like, I don't know, Twitter is definitely a good resource if you just a couple times a day scroll through all the FUD and find some people that are listing horses. Like, a lot of them will list them too high, right? Or just be selling a bunch of glue. But there's people out there. And I think Jake is probably one of the best people to follow. I mentioned on the last one, Iceberg. We'll just throw a bunch of horses out there. And, at very least, his should have some breeding value. Maybe we should start doing that with some of our spare pieces we don't have time for. Just list them at whatever we think like half the value of it actually is, just to help the community out, help people build new stables, and bring some cash flow coming our way.
Yeah, that works.
If we've got the time. I don't know if we'll do it.
Yeah. It's like Jake is the new Galactic. I feel like Galactic used to be that guy, and he maybe still is at times, but he seems a little more disengaged. But he would always have these really nice assets. Like we got Penguin from him, and yeah, he'll just let go of them on a whim, and then the next day he'll be like a bull again and buying other assets.
Well, don't say that to Jake, or he's going to stop, because the horse Born to Battle, right? One, I think Galactic sold it for like 0.025 a couple months ago, right? And it won the Class 1 Premier 3.0 thing last night at like 1,500. Probably netted almost two grand, I think, from that tournament.
Wow. Yeah, didn't track the finals. We didn't have the pleasure. Good for them though. That was a beast. I think that one started like super hot after they had bought it for 0.025, and it had cooled off a little bit, but then it always had really good 3.0 variants. So that's a nice win, and well deserved too with that type of horse.
And they spent the time leveling. I like seeing these people that we brought it up how many months ago that there was probably opportunity to spend time on 3.0s and level them up. I specifically remember you saying like, there's got to be 3.0 only stuff at some point. There has to be, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we didn't take advantage of that ourselves, but some people did, and it's good to see them, getting paid off from it. Another person I saw with a big win yesterday was the guy that we bought Great Hedge from for this 1 ETH stable, Scenic Stables, who bought a bunch of horses from us. And he said he won the Class 1 Premier yesterday. He said it was the biggest win of his ZED career. And I don't know if he's got to be around for like 2 years now, I think. Yeah. He's been around for a while. So you love to see stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah. Wissy Mac, if that's how you say it. So I love to see it. I'd like to see us being more successful as well with the community. But hey, you take what you can get.
Yeah. I always say when we lose, ZED wins. So yeah. Zed had a big night last night.
Yeah. Okay, Kevin. Any final thoughts here?
No, I'm good. I think it was a nice show, nice balanced show. Hopefully we can stay hot in this 3.0 stable, or I guess no, the 1 ETH stable, not to be confused with the all 3.0s. But yeah,
it's 2.0s and 3.0s. Yeah, 2.0 plus stable.
Running hot. Hopefully it can stay hot, and then maybe they announce a 2.0 plus tournament, and then it'll really take off. That'd be cool.
Yeah, this would be good timing for that. Okay, Kevin. Well, pleasure as always. Again, keep an eye out for the Zombie Maiden details blog post coming. Should generally follow what we talked about here. I'm going to put the link to Zombie's Discord in the description to the show. Maybe if we have time when the details come out on that, we'll try to sneak a live stream in, take some questions, shoot the shit with the community kind of thing out on Twitch. But until then, good luck to everybody out on the track. I am at Zed Diamond Hands on Twitter. Follow Kevin. He is at Arbitrage.Run. Subscribe to our show here. We appreciate it. Go find us out on Twitch, the Arbitrage.Run Twitch. follow us there for when we do those live streams. And we will catch you guys next time. Take it easy, Kevin.
See ya.